is! They've sent everyone to Camberwell Green.
Trainee barrister Kakoly Pande has had a gruelling 18-month apprenticeship and now hopes to win a permanent job in chambers.
Please take my name and give it to the custody and the court so that...
She has done the training. Now she needs to pass the interview.
It's quite a terrifying experience because the door can snap shut and then you're sort of effectively back to square one.
Kakoly is one of 4 candidates who are all competing to be taken on. There are 15,000 barristers in Britain, but with more and more joining the profession every year, there is not enough work or money to go round. Only the strongest will survive.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Bye. Bye. I'm in.
Kakoly is now a tenant barrister at her chambers, 2 Dr. Johnson's buildings. Within a week of getting the job, she's on the way to her first Crown Court trial.
I googled my opponents because I wanted to find out well, I wanted to contact him to talk to him about the case. And I found out that my opponent became a barrister 6-7 years before I was born, so I'm quite apprehensive about meeting him.
New tenants can expect only 3 or 4 Crown Court trials in their first year, but they could earn as much as 4 times the amount they get for work in magistrates' courts. Kakoly's head of chambers, Mark Love, hopes she will continue to attract lucrative business.
In the decision to give a pupil a tenancy, one is being optimistic that the work can be generated because of their own ability, and this is going to increase the amount of work that's actually available in the chambers. If they remain merely in the magistrates' court for the next 12, 15 months, 2 years after their tenancy, they are not, in my view, going to survive financially at the bar.
In her first appearance at the Crown Court, Kakoly is defending a man accused of attacking his girlfriend with a baseball bat.
The trial is about a man and a woman who used to be in a relationship for a very, very long time, but at the time of the incident, they were going through quite a rocky patch. The woman is saying that a man beat her up quite brutally in a local wood. And the man, who's my client, says nothing like that happened. We went to that wood to have sex. So that's what he's saying, that, you know, they quite like to indulge in a bit of public affection. And that's what they did that night, but under no circumstances did he beat her up in the way that she's saying.
Moving up from the magistrates to the Crown Court is a big step in any barrister's career, but the ultimate challenge is to appear at the highest court in the land.
We're going through to the House of Lords, Judicial Chamber.
Sorry?
We're going through to the Judicial Chamber, we're going in the, or whatever that entrance is called there.
Black Rods?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
David Wolfe is taking a case to the Law Lords, the country's most senior judges.
So this is the judges' corridor. So that's it, that's our courtroom. Come in. Here we are. When people are talking to the members of the House of Lords, the judges, they'll stand here. Little map here of where the judges are. 5 judges, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, will sit in a circle round there. This is our appeal, so we will start. So I'll talk first, so the other side will probably spend most of the day just sitting there, looking miserable. Hello.
The other side have assembled a formidable team.
Three days, apparently. Is that different to what you think? There's two sides over there, as it were, and I suspect they've got more people as well, just there. One's a government department, effectively, and one's a private company, so they're likely, in both cases, to have lots of people, whereas we've only got quite a small team.
The case is all about one of the world's largest cement companies. 5 years ago, Cemex was granted a permit to start burning shredded tyres as fuel. But ever since, Lilian Palikaropoulos has been challenging that decision.
Now you can see the cement plant beautifully. It looms over the town. You can actually see it from about 10, 15 miles away, you know, in all directions.
Cemex is operating lawfully, but Lilian claims that the government's Environment Agency acted unlawfully in the way they granted the permit.
What this court case is about, basically, is shown here on this photograph. I don't know if I can make it a little bit bigger. This is the main stack, which is 115 metres high, and that has about 3,000 tonnes of gas coming out of it every day. Now, these here are the cement mills at the back, and there you can see one stack there, and there's another one at the back there, and these are what we call the low-level point source emissions. These are supposed to be limited, but they're only monitored twice a year, and it's these that cause the problems and the main impact on people who live near the plant. Cemex says sorry, as 8 tonnes of pulverised fuel falls on people's heads as far away as 3 miles away, and this is, you know, just a wiping off the top of somebody's car. They got an enforcement action and telling them to smarten up their act and not to let it happen again. And that was just a few weeks after they'd been fined in the courts in Warwick for dumping 7 tonnes of dust on our head. Yes, I'm afraid it's all rather untidy, she says. That's the understatement. The understatement. I mean, people told me to file when we started this whole case. They said file, but I thought, well, it'll be over soon. I won't need to file. So then everything just became a disaster, and lots of it's in boxes, and I've got other rooms as well with more files, I hasten to admit, but most of it ends up just stacked up, you know, and when you need to find something, it's very difficult, really.
Lilian's been to the High Court, she's been to the Court of Appeal. Now she's paying £25,000 of her own money to have her case heard at the House of Lords.
Right. Yeah, come on, I can see you.
Should we go outside?
Yeah, sure. Perfect. Found out this morning.
No, don't tell me more stuff. I can't do I can't do new stuff. Lilian, please.
It's very exciting and a little bit intimidating, I have to admit. I think we've got fantastic lawyers, from the best that we could have. So if we don't win, we won't be that we haven't presented our case as best we can.
Best case scenario is that we succeed in getting what we want, which is we want the court to declare that the permit in question was granted unlawfully. We want them to say that it needs to be reconsidered, and we want them to give the Environment Agency and the cement company a defined time in which that can take place, so there can be a proper open reconsideration of the application for the permission to operate the cement plant. That's what we're asking for.
The 5 law lords arrive.
Counsel and interested parties.
At Woolwich Crown Court, Kakoly is facing her first challenge. Her client's ex-girlfriend is afraid of coming face-to-face with him in court.
So the problem that we have is the court has allowed her to have something called special measures, so she can give her evidence via video link or a screen. And I was given very, very late notice of this, and so I'm going to object because I don't think she's in fear, and certainly we deny the offence. in its entirety, and we think it's very prejudicial for my client. And although it's not the case that it's not a fair trial if he can't see his accuser, it's certainly prejudicial in the eyes of the jury, because they'll think, oh, well, you know, she must be very scared because she can't be in the same room as him. So we want to sort of remove that possible prejudice towards my client.
The ultimate experience for a criminal barrister is a jury trial. A jury trial has a frisson, has an experience which other trials don't. You are dealing with 12 members of the public. You really feel you are using your advocacy. I had a great friend, first and up to the 10th jury trial she did, she was physically sick every time before she went to court. And she really had to say, I can't do the job.
I'm feeling excited about it actually, because it's been a long time coming. I've done a lot of work preparing for this trial, and the day has come where suddenly you have to, you know, realise this ambition. The atmosphere is very different in a Crown Court, and the work that you are undertaking is more complicated, so the responsibility is greater, the pressure is greater, because a person's liberty is really at stake, because for the offences with which my client is charged, he will go straight into custody if he is found guilty of of those offences. But my heart's beating very, very fast.
Like almost all defendants in criminal trials, Kakoly's client will have his fees paid for by the state. But there is no legal aid available for Lillian, and so far, her battle with the authorities has cost her £70,000.
A wonderful performance on the part of our barrister, and a great atmosphere in the courtroom. It's really gripping. You could probably get addicted to this kind of thing. And it's very hopeful for the people of Rugby that, you know, we will see some environmental justice. It's been 7 years of a battle, and I think we've got a fantastic legal team, Owen, David and the others, and we are very hopeful that they've managed to get the justice that we so urgently need. Wonderful. Wow! I get that Oscar. And thank you, Tessa. Bless you. Thank you so much. We're worn out, but you've got sinners. It's all this.
Well, let's go and track that down. It's this way.
I'm going to track my daughter down now. She's round here.
Tessa, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Bye, David. Bye. Bye. Bye.
There are 5 judges and we've got different reactions from each of them. Some gave more away than others, but even then you can always misread. I mean, the impression we had is that one of them was much more sympathetic than the others and one was much less sympathetic than the others. But as I say, you can always misread that, and their minds might be changed by the others when they talk about it.
It will take 3 months for the law lords to deliver their opinions, and for Lillian to discover whether her money was well spent.
I think this is a very important thing that might come out of this case, is that they've got to revise the system in England so that more people can have access to justice and not be just, you know, left to fund it all out of their own pocket. You know, for people, ordinary people, to start up a judicial review, where are they going to get £70,000 or £100,000 from? And also it's the risk that you could lose your whole house. So you're going to think twice about it, even if you're absolutely 100% convinced you're right.
This year, a record number of students have been called to the bar. Iqbal Mohammed has passed his exams and has even lined up a pupillage. But only tonight will he finally become a barrister at a call ceremony in Middle Temple, one of the 4 Inns of Court.
Wow. I have got a big head.
This may be the only time Iqbal wears a wig and gown, because he wants to practice in family law, and traditional costume isn't used by barristers in those courts.
On the one hand, you have the tradition and the very special customs of the English legal bar, which is very special compared to continental Europe. You know, we invented the common law system, But on the other hand, it is a bit silly, isn't it? It's a bit theatrical and a bit dressing up. But I mean, I think we should have robes like this, and I quite like the bands, but I think the wig, I think, maybe is a bit antiquated.
My lords, I propose this case is a load of bollocks. It must be dismissed.
Wigs and gowns are seen by many as a very visible symbol of an outdated profession, but some chambers are keen to project a much more modern image. Matrix is home to David Wolfe and his pupil, Elizabeth Pachaska.
Matrix has about 6 different colours, is that right, David? How many colours does Matrix have?
Matrix is... Well, let me do it. Come.
It has these colours, which it puts on all its letterheads and stationery, and then throughout the building...
the walls will match the colours.
The walls match the colours, so our meeting rooms each have one wall in a certain colour.
Branding.
Corporate identity.
Matrix was set up by, it was then 23 barristers. We had initially 23 barristers and about 6 or 7 staff, people who wanted to have a more modern way of organising themselves. So whether that's a more modern building, a more modern approach to employing staff, using different terminology, a different way of dealing with clients, all of those things, really a common theme around getting away to some extent from the old bar way of doing things, behaving, thinking of ourselves as a business rather than anything else, and then seeing that through in various practical ways that you see around this building and how we, I think, organise.
I think the more modern chambers have started to get more into marketing because they realise that in the current climate where there's less work for barristers or different types of work for barristers, they really need to sell themselves more than perhaps they used to.
The colours change here, you know that? The colours around here change.
I hadn't noticed that.
Sit here and read newspapers?
Matrix has, it uses different language from other barristers' chambers. So we don't have clerks, we have practice assistants, we don't have pupils, we have trainees. Matrix is Matrix, it's not chambers.
It's part of a whole range of things which are about being a modern service industry. We provide a legal service. We're not some antiquated, highfalutin activity that goes on behind the scenes. We are providing a service, as do solicitors, surveyors, accountants, and so on. And I think we should behave like that. We should have a modern office, which is what clients now expect. We should have. We should talk to people in language they understand. We shouldn't use jargon to describe our meetings. We shouldn't use jargon to describe the kind of processes we're involved in, because we alienate our clients.
Pressure to change the bar is growing all the time. Government is seeking major changes to the structure and funding of the entire legal profession. The man negotiating on behalf of all barristers is Chairman of the Bar Council, Tim Dutton QC.
When I first became a barrister, I didn't think I would be chairman of the bar, but I did always think I would be fighting cases. And I don't think you can be a good chairman of the bar without knowing how to fight a case. So it's quite useful to keep my hand in. I get, my nerves are all, I'm sort of all there, all engaged. I don't go around shaking, but I still have that pre-court tension the same way that an actor would before going on stage, or a musician would. And without it, I think you lose your edge. But I've also got to eat a few biscuits before there's got no time for brekkie yet. I think the more challenging the time that you lead a profession, the better, providing you feel you're up to the challenge. And this is an incredibly interesting time to lead the profession, because you've got legislation which potentially will alter the way barristers work and have worked for hundreds of years. And the big question is, firstly, whether there's any need for those changes, and if any changes are made, whether it's going to help the public more than we help them at the moment. And that's, I think, a fairly major issue.
One of the changes that has most enraged barristers is the government's plan to cap the legal aid budget.
So if you practice in crime, most criminal cases are publicly funded by the state, and therefore barristers practicing in criminal work and also in family work are receiving fees which are lower fees. You can't keep cutting the amount you pay if you're increasing the pressures. At some point, something's got to give.
It is a very concerning time for the bar, particularly in the areas of practice which my chambers is involved with. We're seeing the gross income of chambers reducing. We've got to be prepared for the change, and we have to hope that we can see new opportunities that keep the bar alive. We wouldn't be bringing people into chambers if we thought we had no future at all, but we still have got to consider that the way things are today are not going to be the way things are in 5 years' time.
And it's barristers like Kakoly that will be most affected by these changes to funding. Her trial is becoming more complicated. The prosecution have abandoned a plan to raise previous allegations about her client's character, but that doesn't help her case, and she wants advice.
So I was ready to oppose a bad character application in relation to my client, because there was a lot of kind of past allegations of him beating up his ex-partner. But they were never brought to court, never cautioned, nothing, it was just allegations. Okay, and they were going to bring those forward. They're quite dated, but the prosecution would say, well, no, this propensity to act in this manner shows a jealous relationship with his with women. Now they've withdrawn that, but I was aiming to oppose it, but then forward my own bad character application in relation to her, because she's got dishonesty offences from 2001 and then one recently for benefit fraud. And the reason I want, especially the last one, to go in is because it shows sort of a motive for why she's brought this allegation against him.
If I were you, the trouble is, once you bring up your allegation, they'll be able to remake their application.
Well, he said he's not going to.
Well then, why don't you try and have your cake and eat it? Do you think you're on strong ground putting the benefit forward and all of that? Or do you think it's just
only because it enables me to have some cross-examination later? Because we're saying this has all come from the fact that you want to get your own back on him, and we've got a statement from somebody else who says that this was actually discussed with me, and the complainant definitely wants to get her own back.
Well, that's quite a good defence point, isn't it?
I think so.
I think you've got better ammo with it in than
out. Yeah. Okay.
You've got to give her as hard a time as you can, haven't you, on his behalf?
Yeah.
Particularly where there's an allegation of dishonesty.
Yeah.
Lying to the state effectively about her benefits. You're probably damned if you do and damned if you don't, but
yeah. Well, that's quite
try it. Okay, good luck.
Thank you.
But there's even more trouble brewing for Kakoly. At her chambers, some of the barristers have objected to the latest tenancy appointments. With legal aid being squeezed, they fear there won't be enough work to go round.
Well, at the moment, the objections are in relation to one of the candidates only. That is, in fact, Kakoly. There is a concern that we have been too generous in our optimism, and I think that'll be voiced. And it is fair to say that the debate may very much be between some of the younger members of the chambers who may feel that they are more under threat by the candidates than those who are further up the door.
Kakoly has been summoned back to chambers to face her 30 colleagues. It will be the greatest test of her advocacy so far.
Quite distressing, really, especially when there was the initial elation of being taken on. Then I feel as if I've moved on from that, and I'm now doing my first Crown Court trial. And in and amongst the stress of doing that, I now have to turn my mind to, again, going through the whole process of putting myself up for tenancy again for the second time in the same place. which is a difficult and humiliating experience, if I'm honest.
It's a fair point to say that informing a successful candidate at one point that they have succeeded as far as the decision is concerned, and then having to tell them later, well, actually, it is open to challenge in a full meeting, is unpleasant. But they know the Constitution. They are all aware of how the selection process takes place, and I would have, and I tell each candidate that the decision of the Tenancy Committee is one which is subject to the ratification of Chambers.
I just have to show them that I'm made of stronger substance than they have perhaps given me credit for.
I don't think this is a disaster for Kakoly if she's not taken on. I think it's fair to say that, of course, it's a personal knockback because this is a very pressurised world and she has tried very hard and she has clearly impressed a number of people. But from what I know of her, she has a depth of character that I would think she will pick herself up and she will seek a third 6 months elsewhere, and she will succeed.
As Kakoly fights to hold on to her position in Chambers, Iqbal is ready to join the ever-increasing number of new barristers. He is one of over 600 students to be called to the bar at Middle Temple this year.
So this is my little brother, Danish. Say hello. Hello. So he's at primary school. Hopefully he's going to become a solicitor or a barrister. That's my mum, in the red.
No, darling, just turn this way a little bit if you can.
My mum's quite happy now. And she's very proud of me as well. I think it's really sunk in how big an achievement it is, because when she tells people that my son's a barrister, their eyes sort of light up and they say, wow, that's amazing. So I think she's quite happy now with me.
Master Treasurer, I present Iqbal Mohammed.
Mr. Mohammed, in the name of the Masters of the Bench, I call you to the degree of the utter bar.
Paul Allen Phillips.
I didn't think when I was young I would be a barrister. I thought I'd be working in the coal mines in the West Midlands. But I think I really genuinely am one of the first products of the accessible bar. I am here purely through the generosity of the members of the Middle Temple who put their hands into their pockets and put their money, hard-earned money, into a pot for students that wanted to become barristers. And really, if we don't have a bar made up of the various different colours and backgrounds of which Britain is made up, that's fatal for the bar. That's when the institution will lose its legitimacy, its relevance, its importance in the mindset of the public.
That was one of the most difficult things I've ever had to encounter, actually. I hope that I don't experience that again. And I hope that if there is someone in that position, I'm going to fight tooth and nail for them not to be in that position, because it's not fair and it's not very dignified.
Kakoly's performance with the whole of Chambers, which was clearly difficult because it was a disappointment to be told that of the group of 4 candidates, there were some individuals who felt that she should not have been offered a tenancy. she acquitted herself remarkably well. There were 2 or 3 individuals who had some doubts, who were astonished by her performance in interview in very difficult circumstances, and I was very pleased for her. She was able to show firsthand why she's going to go a long way and be a capable advocate.
For a second time, Kakoly has got the job.
Certainly put a slight shadow upon my confidence as a barrister, and I'm so glad that throughout all of the difficulties, I just kept my head down and concentrated. What was really the most important thing was, preparing this Crown Court trial and representing my client. And I'm annoyed that I allowed it, my confidence, to have been dislodged in that manner. But what I'm sure of is that whatever's going on, still can do my work properly, which is, for me, the most important thing.
I think it is a harsh system because I think the numbers who actually succeed are relatively small, but ultimately there are far more people following the potential openings than there are openings available for them.
This climate of uncertainty has put the bar and the government on a collision course. The change to legal aid funding is the #1 concern for Tim Dutton and his colleagues at the Bar Council.
The Treasury has fixed the legal aid budget at £2 billion. That's for all family cases, all civil cases, and all criminal cases on legal aid that go through the system. In order for them to live within this £2 billion, they are imposing cuts in different parts of the service from time to time. So they're cutting £9 million out of high-cost criminal cases, £13 million from barristers in family cases, and they, in order to live within this £2 billion budget. The tension is that they think that we are in it for more money. That always creates a tension. They think solicitors and barristers are doing this for more money. They need to understand that we understand the economics, we understand that you've got to live within budget, but that you need to ensure you've got quality people working in the system for optimum rates of pay, and that requires what we call graduated fees, in other words, fees that are referred to the difficulty of the case, but do not permit you to run away with the budget.
The Bar Council knows it must guard against any perception that barristers are a wealthy elite.
Well, I'll give Sarah a ring.
They must convince the government and the public that more, not less, taxpayers' money should be invested in the law.
You need to have something new, newly created, a new vision, a new statement, a new document, in order to generate news coverage in your own terms of the issue.
How does the document help achieve anything?
Its strongest aspect is it gives you the sort of shallow end of the pool that we can lead people into, so that we can take them down to our sort of deep end where the issues are more profound.
Well, I think what the publicly funded bar want to get across to the public as a whole who pay for their cases is that they're scrawny moggies and not fat cats.
Quite often the cats that we're working with are very much in-demand practitioners who as a result aren't that scrawny because they're working away. Yeah. So there's a kind of scrawny, there's a sort of Desmond's scrawniness test which needs to be dealt with.
Well, that's junior members of the bar.
Yeah, I think the
and
family's
it's not
quite
just,
important.
of course, the low level of fees, it's the appalling level of debt that young entrants to the profession now have and are struggling to pay back.
While the Bar Council tries to dispel the fat cat image, another attempt to break down an equally common assumption is underway. For the first time in their 400-year history, 2 Inns of Court, Inner and Middle Temple, have thrown open their doors to try to show the public that they're neither privileged nor exclusive. One of the organisers of the open day is Middle Temple's Social Secretary, Paul Darling QC.
A lot of people don't know what the bar is about and how it works. And I think that is a problem. We've got chambers open, so people can go and look inside chambers and see what's happening in there, see what a barrister's chambers looks like. We've got advocacy training happening in the Royal Courts of Justice, some of it involving children. as the witnesses and defendants in the children's court.
The prosecution would like to call Mr. Billy Budd.
Mr. Budd, do you promise that the evidence you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
What do you think the motive of this attack was?
Jealousy and revenge because of my relationship with Mavis Clutterbuck.
Mr. Smith also wanted a relationship and was extremely jealous. Is that true?
Miss Prosecutor, do you think that you could ask the witness first about the details of what actually happened before the motive?
Iqbal is volunteering his services for the day.
I thought actually it'd be quite a simple thing to help out the Middle Temple, you know, which shows you how stupid I am, because they sent me sort of 40 pages of things to read up on, which I have diligently done. The problem is just remembering them.
During the war, all the glass was removed and replaced with plain glass.
Yeah.
So when this was rebuilt after the war, all this was brought out of stories, and these are the original glass.
Oh, these are the original.
We should go back to 1570.
I didn't know that. I thought they were rebuilt.
No, they were all original.
To 1870?
1570.
1570.
Yep.
Right. The interesting thing is that a lot of visitors are quite worried that these stained glass windows are not original. But at the time of the war, what they did was they replaced all the glasses. They took them downstairs in the cellar and they put up, you know, just normal glass because they were afraid that it would be bombed. Then after the Second World War, when they rebuilt it, they put the originals back.
Tim Dutton is taking his campaign to the very top. He has a meeting with Jack Straw, a barrister himself, but now Secretary of State for Justice.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We're very familiar with it. Thanks. Ah, hello.
Very nice to see you.
Cool. This is Andy Hill and Desmond Brown.
My time's pressing on account of the Law Lord's judgment in Davis. So, because I've got to sort out the bill, which we're publishing later on. So if we can
let's
crack
go.
that. All right. Thanks.
Do you want us anywhere in particular?
Phil, what is it? If you sit here, it's fine.
Going back.
Tim, if you sit there.
Yeah, okay.
The thing I wanted to talk to you about is how we better align the supply of lawyers with demand, because part of the problem about a legal aid system is that if people are, particularly the bar, working full time, then they can make a reasonable income, but there's this dreadful tail because there are too many people chasing what is a significant increase in the work compared with when I started, most of us started, but is not enough work for everybody's around because the numbers have increased by a factor of 3 since we all started. You can't get exact fits in terms of supply and demand for highly qualified people, but you can get a better fit than you have now, and you can actually also manage people's expectations better.
The government is also breaking down the distinctions between the roles of barristers and solicitors. It's a move which David Wolfe welcomes. He sits on the Legal Services Commission, the body that holds the legal aid purse strings.
What they will say is, here is a chunk of money to represent this client, and we don't much care whether you're a barrister or a solicitor or how you organise yourselves internally. And I think the market will respond to that by solicitors' firms increasingly bringing barristers in-house or setting up hybrid organisations where barristers and solicitors work together. The sort of bright light that's been shone on the medical profession or other professions in the past has really only recently started to look at the bar, and that's it's a good thing.
But it is centuries of history and tradition that are drawing huge crowds to the open day.
Okay there, folks? Interesting?
Very interesting.
Good, I'm pleased.
Middle Temple porter John Morrissey is proud of their heritage.
Well, Shakespeare first performed Twelfth Night on 2nd of February 1602 in here. Well, the story of the coats of arms that are up in the windows there, we've got Sir Walter Raleigh, and next to him is John Popham. Now, as you probably know, Sir Walter Raleigh ended up in a nice 2 up, 2 down up the road here, called the Tower of London, and eventually they decided to dispense with his head. Well, the man who ordered the execution there was John Popham. And there they are 460 years later, and they can't get away from each other. We've got the Drake's Cupboard, which is from the Golden Hind. So, yeah, it's a very famous place.
One of the biggest attractions is Temple Church, built 900 years ago by the Knights Templar, the original Crusaders, whose effigies survive in the church today.
You know, what's really interesting about the Templars is that actually, as a Muslim, actually, our perspective on it is completely naturally different. So if you go to Parliament, you know, if you go to Westminster Palace, you'll see these huge, huge murals of the Crusaders setting off to the Holy Land. They're carrying swords and all this kind of stuff. And it's saying that they're going off to war with the Saracens and stuff like this. That's the inscriptions that are written underneath. From our point of view, they were invaders, you know, fanatical, bloodthirsty, you know, fundamentalist invaders that were coming along to basically kill, you know, Muslims that live there. But it's a really interesting, it's a completely different take from the Western historical perspective compared to the Muslim historical perspective. Because when I first came here to dine, some of my friends were like, what, the Templar Knights? Like, the Templar Knights. I was like, yeah, it's kind of descended from that. And they were like, oh my God, how can you do that? How can they even let you in if you're not a Christian? I was like, oh, it's a bit different now.
On the steps. Did you find it interesting? Down the lane, Mark, 5th door, right-hand side. Take care, fellas.
It is good that they carry on a tradition that's been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. It is good that as a society we can trace our past like that and we do uphold these things, but at the same time I think the wigs are a bit silly.
The ivory towers with the wigs is an impression I accept some people have, but equally I don't think it's an entirely right one, and I think that what we're doing will hopefully just change that a bit. We're never going to change everyone's perception overnight, but this is all part and parcel of gradually showing everyone what the position is, and they can then form their own view.
I think a lot of people have preconceptions. They read Charles Dickens and they see the journalists and the people coming out of High Court, and that's it. So this is wonderful to open the doors to everybody, be it a child of 9 or an old age pensioner, and everybody could ask questions. Anywhere I've been today, I could ask questions and somebody gave me an answer. Fantastic.
The day is approaching when Iqbal will start work as a barrister.
This is St Philip's here. This is the chambers that I'll be starting at in October. Every time I walk past it, I do get sort of goosebumps. I really, really can't wait to start pupillage, to start doing something I really care about.
But today he's in Birmingham for a case of his own.
Basically, I've got a 20-minute hearing in front of a county court judge, and I almost had an epiphany over the weekend. I really think I can win this case. I think the law's on my side, I think the facts are on my side, and I think there's a very, very high chance of me going in there persuading this judge. It's quite a nice court, actually. It's the first time I've ever had to argue a case in court, so I've never been here before. It's a relatively simple case. Basically, I cancelled my contract after Orange overbilled me, but Orange are saying that they didn't overbill me, that was the bill that I should have paid, and then they entered a credit reference against me. So for me, I have to go in there and show that actually they did overbill me and the credit reference is wrong and it has to be removed. And that's basically what it hangs on, it's to those two issues. And I think if you want to change anything, you know, the best way to do it is to stand up for your rights. If you let them take your money, then there's no incentive for them to improve, is there?
Iqbal will not be fighting this case as a barrister, but as a member of the public.
You know, I'm not arguing for somebody else, I'm arguing for myself. I have to say, what I thought, you know, so it's a bit different to saying, you know, what the claimant thought, or what the defendant thought, or something. Yeah.
At Woolwich Crown Court, the jury has retired to consider its verdict.
We have delivered our closing speeches, the judge has summed up, and now the jury are going to spend the next couple of hours deliberating, or less time if they're quite sure of what they've heard and they've decided whether the defendant's guilty or not guilty. I'm feeling quite tense, very nervous, and my client was very happy with the speech that was delivered. Everything he wanted was covered, so I'm glad to that extent. But he's obviously very tense, and he's got, you know, a young family, and if he's convicted then today, you know, he'll go to prison. So There's a lot at stake, and I'm certainly feeling the pressure of it. And I'm not sure which way it will go. So I'm a little bit worried. But then I think the trial has gone well, so I'm positive. I just hope that the jury, through my speech, will keep that in their mind when they're considering whether my client's guilty or not.
The Law Lords have reached a decision on Lillian's appeal.
We have this sort of odd situation where all the lawyers involved know what the result of the case is, and nobody else does because it's embargoed up till literally 9:45, or until the judgment's given. So Lillian is coming along ignorant of what the result is, which I think is perhaps unfortunate, but that's the rules that are imposed upon us.
You know, whatever happens, it's a great day, you know, to have got this far, and you know, I don't think they behead the losers, so we might be okay.
We come through together, up to the top of the step, bow, sit down. Okay, I'll go through the judgment. Once the judgment is complete, and it only takes a couple of minutes, it's a very brief judgment, we will cue you. Once the clerk turns and nods, that's a sign that the case is finished. We'll say, "Thank you, counsel." You then together stand, bow, turn. Literally, the two doors will be open for you. As you go out, we literally call the next case, and as you just sort of part to get past, the next two will come in.
And I think personally that we could have a system that was less covered with ceremony and so on, and more concerned on focusing on the public awareness and appreciation of the underlying process. Because I don't think this process feels very accessible and open to people. But it's changing. We're going to have a Supreme Court in due course, and with any luck that'll bring a more open process.
The Supreme Court will take over the judicial functions of the House of Lords next year. But today, David and Lillian must wait in the Peers lobby for their judgment.
I won! I got a judgment for £271.32. Fantastic. And this is the first of many victories against big companies for me. Hopefully the first one on behalf of my good self, but definitely on behalf of clients. And it's quite nice to have sort of Orange, you know. I went to court once, who did you sue? You know, not some bloody corner shop. This is Orange, one of the biggest mobile phone operators in the world. I sued them for £271, which is brilliant. And what the great thing is that when they submit the company report at the end of the year, they have to say all of the money that they lost in litigation. This will be up there, you know. Iqbal Mohammed against Orange, £271. Brilliant.
It was not guilty on both counts. I was just dumbfounded. I've just written sort of not guilty and then not guilty again, and yeah. I can't believe it. I've won my first Crown Court trial in the midst of everything that was going on. I'm so pleased. It's a victory in so many ways. I can't wait to phone Chambers and let them know what the result was. So, hi Steve, it's Kakoly. Hello. I've just been acquitted of both counts on the indictment, so I'm free for work. Sorry? Of both of them. I'm really pleased. No, it's one of the guys from your brother's chambers, actually. He's very good, yeah. No, I'm really pleased, but that means I'm free for tomorrow. So, I can do that thing, so... Yes, I will be, yes, absolutely. All right, take care. Thanks a lot. Bye, bye. I'm really pleased. He couldn't believe it. My clerk couldn't believe it. He said, what, both of them? Yes.
The Queen on the application of Edwards against the Environment Agency and others. Counsel.
A report from the Appellate Committee in the appeal, the Queen on the application of Edwards and another against Environment Agency and others, Lord Hoffman.
My Lords, for the reasons contained in a speech which I have prepared and which is available in print, I would dismiss this appeal.
For the reasons that he gives and for some further short reasons of my own, I would dismiss the appeal.
And I too would dismiss the appeal.
I too would dismiss this appeal.
I too would dismiss this appeal.
Lillian has lost her appeal. The law lords have ruled that there was enough information for the cement factory's permit to have been legally granted.
Don't forget your bags and coats, please.
I'll talk about it in a bit.
Yeah, I'll do the best you could.
Well, the result as much as it is dealing with a position as was with 5 years down the line.
Which I find very unsatisfactory.
Very frustrating, yeah.
And I just feel there's no access to justice for people. You know,
No, don't say that.
Well, I do actually feel that.
Yeah, no, I don't understand why you feel that.
And, you know, then perhaps the lower court should have sort of made their point more clearly because they did, you know, instead of the way that they handled it, led us on to go on, when perhaps, you know...
This is a disastrous result for Lillian, and things could get even worse, as she may have to pay the other side's costs.
Well, Lillian, I'm sure Lillian is absolutely sort of horrified and you know, gutted at having lost, understandably so, because she's staked a huge amount of money and time and so on in doing all this. She's been really involved in it, I think pretty much full-time for several years now, and you know, put money at risk and so on. So from her point of view, it's, I suspect, quite devastating. She's potentially liable for the Environment Agency and indeed possibly Cemex's legal costs of the proceedings, and that could be many tens of thousands of pounds. It may well be that the House of Lords will take a more generous view and decide that she doesn't have to pay all the other side's costs, but she's at least in theory exposed to the other side's costs, which is obviously quite dramatic from her point of view.
The law lords later decided that Lillian should pay the Environment Agency's costs, which could be as much as £100,000.
And I'm sure it's done as a way of making sure that any ordinary person can't afford to challenge any of these decisions. Well, I mean, for me personally, obviously financially, you know, it could mean that I might lose my house, but we've offered to pay, if I have to pay it in £5,000 a year. So I don't have the money to pay it, so I'll have to find some means of either raising the money or earning the money or winning the money on the lottery.
As another year draws to a close, Middle Temple gather for their annual carol service. Some traditions will never change, but barristers are having to adapt to a world full of challenge and uncertainty.
The real question is whether the government is investing enough in our legal system to make sure that the legal system thrives, and in particular in legal aid, to make sure that people have access to the best advocates, no matter what their financial circumstances. We are, as we speak, getting into a phase where I fear that barristers are going to move out of certain parts of legal aid work, and we need to work with government to make sure that they are encouraged back in.
I think there are undoubtedly some barristers and people involved in the bar who are sort of pretending these changes aren't happening, when I happen to think they're wrong. I think these changes are going to be potentially greater and you know, will affect everybody. So I think someone will have a surprise, and that's no bad thing if they get a slightly rude awakening and have to up their game. That's in the public interest. That's what providing a service to the public is all about.
Whatever the future holds for the bar, the determination of those seeking to join this ancient profession is undiminished. In this series, we followed 4 students through their training and in their search for a job.
The facts of this case are quite simple. Mr. Oxford agreed to supply a cake for the 10th anniversary party.
Stop there. You're delivering this in almost a monotone, and it's boring.
After 40 rejections, Kat Piercy finally received 2 pupillage offers.
All well? You fun?
She's chosen Keating Chambers in London, one of the country's leading specialists in construction law.
Mr. Oakley, you've told the court that you were getting ready for a boys' night out at your friend David Foley's house. And it was free ladies' night that night, wasn't it?
Jo Darby was always going to be a high flyer. After a career in theatre, she switched to law in her late 20s. She quickly gained a pupillage and is already a tenant in her hometown of Newcastle.
Good, OK. There's some nice stuff there, Jo. You've got a really nice tone and manner across the finish. I think that was strong without being too much. I wouldn't have used the word pissed, personally.
Anna Duana Kluger had to resit one of her bar exams, but after she passed, she won a 6-month scholarship to work in a Canadian law firm.
Oh, that's excellent. That's really good. That's really good. That's fantastic.
When she comes home, she'll resume her search for pupillage.
Thank you. That's really good.
Iqbal also won a scholarship covering the entire cost of his fees at bar school. He's now about to start pupillage in his hometown of Birmingham, specialising in family law.
The great thing about the bar, the reason that I'm here at the bar and not anywhere else, is so much of it depends on what you are and what you bring to the table and what you are in terms of a person, in terms of your skill set, in terms of your ability. So it's very easy to say, oh, well, you know, the bar's going all pear-shaped, but actually if you're a very good advocate, there'll always be a demand for a good advocate.
And finally, Kakoly, who faced down the objections of her colleagues to get her name on the door.
I feel very confident about the future, having come back from winning my first Crown Court trial. It sort of puts you in good stead for the future, because it's instilled my confidence back into my abilities, which was slightly shaken over the last few weeks. I really see the bar as a vocation for people, and I know that I'm doing the job that I was meant to do.